Hey, what's up? It's Logan, the Drunken Metalhead Who Muses, and tonight I'm kind of doing a two for one. I'm doing a album review and metal pairing, but also sneaking in a concert review at the same time. Uh, Proud of myself about that. So, anyway, a week ago, I went out to a killer concert in Charlotte, North Carolina. It was a stoner rock concert at a local venue called Snug Harbor, one of my favorite spots to be in Charlotte. The concert was with Nebula headlining, and I knew I had to go. So let's see what I thought of the concert and of a certain album. So yeah, with Nebula, I knew they were a California-based band, and they just don't tour that often, especially on the East Coast. So as soon as they were coming, even though I only really had knowledge of their debut album, To the Center, and only a couple songs off of that, I knew I had to go. I mean, add the opening bands to it, and it was a must-go show for me. So it was a Tuesday night. I rounded up a couple of buddies of mine, and we ended up at some of the breweries that were in that local area, which of course is like the ultimate hipster neighborhood in Charlotte. There's multiple record stores, multiple breweries, multiple concert venues. What more could a fucking hipster ask for? So we easily had a couple of beers before we got to the venue. The opening band, which is also the band that's playing behind the scenes right now, is Holy Roller. This is a band from Winston-Salem. I would describe as like kind of like a hard rock sludge band, definitely heavily influenced by Mastodon and Red Fang. When I saw them, they were a five-piece, and they put on a killer opening show. It was around this time in the concert, though, that a buddy of mine that I went with introduced me to the beer that I was going to ultimately drink for the rest of the concert, whether I wanted to or not. My original plan was just to drink PBR or Narragansett or some shit like that. But there's one dude bought us a Juicy J from Legion Brewing here in Charlotte to split. And after he did that, me and him, we just went back and forth up to the bar, buying these fuckers and bringing them back for both of us to drink. And I will just say, the night was great. I'm a little fuzzy at the end about how Nebula truthfully did, which is why this is not a legit concert review. But the workday after sucked ass. So cheers to Juicy J for that one. And with that, let me have a Juicy J to pair with this fucking album and to honor this concert. So this is an IPA, 6.3%, but its issue is it's super light tasting. Too easy to drink, especially when you're just moving around during a active concert. So it was fun, but ended up affecting my memory and my morning the next day. But anyway, as I said, Holy Roller was killer. The Atomic Bitchwax was the second band that performed. I picked up this album right here, 2015's Gravitron, and I've been enjoying the shit out of this album for sure. So I definitely recommend it. Their set was just 70s hard rock with just a little bit of that 90s stoner rock energy, and it was just fun, man. They had a lot of fun. The riffs are absolutely killer. I would definitely recommend the Atomic Bitch Wax. This album is a great spot to start. I would say track 1, Executioner, track 4, Warclaw, track 10, Ice Age. Can't go wrong with any of those. So to finally talk about Nebula a little bit, um, their set was killer. They sounded super tight and heavy for only a 3-piece band up there. They really brought the energy and the intensity. They were all constantly moving. They played a wide range from their whole discography that I could tell. They definitely featured a lot of Into the Center, which I appreciated. In fact, they opened up with the title track and then followed it with track 2. They also played for forever, like an hour and a half. It was about 1 a.m. when they ended, and I was fucking toasted. Mainly because of this. Partially because it was a Tuesday night, and partially because I just watched a, stoner rock band play for an hour and a half. It was quite the evening, quite the concert. Would recommend. They're still touring for a little bit longer. If you can check them, please do. Kind of touch on the history of Nebula a little bit. They formed back in 1997 when Eddie Glass and Ruben Romano both left Fu Manchu. Eddie being the guitarist and vocalist for their new band, and Romano being the drums. They recruited Mark Abshire playing bass, and thus Nebula was formed, and finally got to it with 1999's To the Center, released on Sub Pop. It's cool. This is the album I picked up at the concert, and definitely ready to dive in to the material here. To me, this album is very much a snapshot of what stoner rock, and specifically this band, was in 1999. A little bit like Lost and Confused. They were grabbing on many different bands and influences at this point. And definitely like reaching decades before into like the 70s for sounds and kind of a little sense of direction. I think if you're a fan of this style, you will realize that they very much do it successfully, which I do. But I think if you're not necessarily a fan of stoner, you might be let down by this album and might approach it from a tad more critical perspective and come up with them being uninspired. To me, there's undoubtedly a youthful band filled with energy trying to find their sound in this era of stoner rock. They're kind of grasping at a lot of other different sounds and just seeing where everything fits. And there's a lot of places that this sound and the other influences and inspirations they're grasping from really do fit. But then at the same time, it's hard not to recognize that that's what they're doing. But then this is their debut after being a part of a big formative band for 90s stoner rock. So I'd say you gotta give them some grace in that perspective. But let's dive a little deeper into the album. So first off, To the Center really does a good job of separating itself out and kind of pacing itself within the context of the album. Like, the first 4 songs are very much high energy and really lean more into that like classic 90s Fu Manchu stoner vibe. I mean, the first track is their most well-known song. That one being one of the more laid-back and almost Black Sabbath influenced songs. I mean, it it really has some directions in the songs with the riffs and the drums pairing up nicely together that make you think of that classic Iommi Bill Ward combo. Um, Track 2, Calm Down, sounds just like Fu Manchu, but God, is it fucking awesome and filled with energy, and it's just infectious. Track 4 might be my favorite song on the album. It's called Clear Light, and it really balances that Fu and Sabbath energy with the first like 2.5 minutes of the song being just high energy, Fu Manchu style, stoner rock, with like just a little bit of 70s, and then it just closes it up with this Sabbath level riff and low-key outro that really just balances out the song well and does a great job of closing that first set of tracks. And it is the strongest part of the album. Then we get into what I would call the second part, which is where they kind of start. This is where all the missteps kind of happen, if you will. They start with Freedom, which is actually a great song. I really like it. But this is the first track which I really start to imagine another band. I mean, me thinking of Fu Manchu makes sense when two of these three guys are from Fu Manchu. But Freedom makes me think of Caius, you know? And specifically the song Freedom Run. It very much has a similar flow to it where it's like kind of slow. He's got the sliding riff that kind of comes in. And it just makes me think of that Kaya song. And then it has such a laid-back atmosphere with the driving riff behind it. The second closing half definitely reminds me of Caius. But once again, I actually really, really like this song. Freedom is great and probably is one of the better songs on the album, truthfully. I Need Somebody is a cover of a Stooges song, and it took me a little bit to figure this out, and it features the vocals of Mark Arm of Mudhoney and Green River. But whenever I listen to it, all I hear is Dave Windorf from Monster Magnet, and this whole song just sounds like a straight rip of a Monster Magnet song from Dopes to Infinity. Like, it mainly is because of the vocal performance, but then at the same time, all the instruments behind it really capture that, like, psychedelic tinged hard rock that Monster Magnet were really trying to hit on during that era. And I think it's a great song, but at the same time, I just don't necessarily think it fits. And it kind of sets the tone for the next couple of songs, you know? Really, it's not till Fields of Psilocybin that I'm like back into, yes, this is a fucking killer album and I'm here for it. And even then, Fields of Psilocybin is really a interlude track. Great track name, by the way. But it does such a good job of separating out the middle part, which is a little bit more laid back, a little more chill, to the final closing tracks, which kind of pick up the energy a little bit. And I would definitely recommend Fields of Psilocybin. It's just such a chill jam. Between Time is the second cover on the album, and it's actually a cover of Blue Cheer. And I really like this one. And then the closing track, You Mean Nothing, is perfect for the Nebula code and the sound that I think they're developing on this album. You know, it's a mixture of that stoner rock speed from Fu Manchu, but then a little bit more spaced out heaviness as well, a little more Black Sabbath influence. And also it's just a little bit obnoxious. I mean, the guy's just saying, "You mean nothing to me, baby." and like that's the whole point of the song. And I think that fits with what kind of Nebula wants to do, and I appreciate it. So it ends it on a high note as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, in a sense, this album kind of lacks a little bit of personal identity. When I listen to it, I hear a bit of a band originating from Manchu trying to find their place in 1999 and borrowing a little bit from Black Sabbath and borrowing a little bit from Caius and borrowing a lot in places from Monster Magnet. It's a little too early on to see what they might become, and I need to dive in deeper and see what the next album is. As far as the overall flow, I think it flows extremely nice. It's a little bit long at about 47 minutes, and I would just say cut out one of the covers. You got two covers on here. Take out one. I would say take out the Stooges cover, and I'd be happy. So yeah, for me, this is a easy, flat 8 out of 10 on Drunken Metalhead Reviews. I'll tell you what To the Sinner has done, though, is encourage me to try to dive deeper into Nebula as a band and to take them more seriously as like a pillar of the stoner rock scene. In other exciting news, this is the beginning of a very lucrative season for fans of stoner, doom, and sludge. It's 420 season, baby. This is the beginning of a bunch of videos, I hope, to pay in tribute to all the genres I just mentioned. Cheers, and let's party. Drink good beer, listen to good metal.